Hey there guys, welcome back, Ricky here. Okay, so today I'm doing another cut demo here, and I'm going to do two knives that people have been asking a lot about. I've got the Enzo HD chef knife here, or the Gyuto, and also the Nakiri. So the Nakiri versus chef knife, or Nakiri versus Gyuto, has been requested by a lot of folks, and so finally I have the chance to do it today. I'm making a tonic, so I'm not going to get into it too much. Basically, growing up, my dad always made a tonic during the wintertime, and it's equal parts garlic, ginger, onions, pepper, jalapeno, and turmeric root with, what's the other ingredient? Horseradish. And he basically just mixed all of it up. Throw some, he put rice wine vinegar, but I'm going to use apple cider vinegar because I think it tastes a little bit better. So basically, I make that once in a while, and just once it's done, every day or two, I take a teaspoon of it, and it's supposed to keep off infection and keep you healthy during the wintertime. I've divided my ingredients here equally between the two knives. Hopefully it will be a decent demo for you guys. So again, I got onions, ginger, garlic, jalapeno, and turmeric. Normally you would get the horseradish, the turmeric, and the ginger into a grater, but I want to just use a knife and just do some fine chopping. It works just as well. So again, I am not a professional when it comes to cutting ingredients, so please don't hold me to that standard. I'm really just an average home cook. Okay, so if you guys are cool with that, we'll get the cutting started. So I'll start with the Nakiri, since its ingredients might be easier from my left. So I'll move the chef knife over. So I've got a slight cough right now, so if you guys see the clip cut, it's because I had a cough, and I didn't want to show you guys the coughing. So that's all it is. So I'm not going to talk about the knife's profiles too much until after the demo. I'll talk, kind of walk you guys through it and see, what my experiences are. But I will give you guys kind of a more breakdown, a clearer breakdown of the knife's profiles and their advantages after the cutting is done. Okay, so the onion is done for the Nakiri, and as you guys can see, it was very easy to cut. And the knives are razor sharp out of the box. And so now I'm gonna just finely mince the onions. And not necessary, but I'm just gonna make it just so it's easier for me. So Nakiris, you can see here, the profiles are fairly straight. There is a very slight arc or radius. It does have a slight higher spot right here. So it does allow the knives to rock a little bit, which is nice if you need to do some rocking on your cutting board. Those are all the what you just heard there are a bunch of glass stones that are sitting on their sides. Now, there are nakiris out there that have a very straight profile, and those are more kind of kuritsuke lines where they are very exacting in terms of how you use them, and you don't rock on those at all. But because this does have a radius, you can rock on this knife. Okay, so now the ginger. I'm gonna leave the skin on. Normally you would take the skin off when you're cooking with ginger, but because this is going into a tonic, you don't really need to worry about the skin. So, okay, so what's the easiest way for this? Okay, let's try it this way. Okay, so you can see the push cuts are really easy on this knife. Okay, so again, I am going to finally chop these up or mince them by hand. Stones again. Now you can also chop. You don't have to do a rocking at all. A lot of folks ask about rocking with certain knives. So if you're fine chopping, chopping makes a little bit of a bigger mess, but it definitely works a lot faster. Okay, so we're done with the ginger. Alright, so now we've got turmeric root. So turmeric root really, it's very much similar to ginger. It's not as strong as ginger, but it also has really good properties that is good for fighting infection. You can see there, it cuts really easily. This knife here took care of it really, really easily. So the turmeric cutting was actually really easy. Turmeric, again, felt just like the ginger, but it's a little bit drier, so it was actually a lot easier to chop. So now we're moving on to the garlic. So obviously jalapeno is the easiest ingredient here. Alright, so that was the Nakiri demo. Very easy to cut, very easy to use. Nakiris are a lot of fun. I've always liked them, and I'm glad I actually have a couple more in the studio now versus just having one for a while. But there, as you can see, that chopping vegetables is a cinch. So now we're going to move to the chef knife. This is the Enzo HD chef knife. Both of these are using VG10 as a core steel. I don't think I actually mentioned that in the beginning. But very nice, just razor sharp out of the box. So we'll do the same thing now with the chef knife. Alright, so cutting that was actually, I just had to make a little adjustment for cutting with the Nakiri for so long, so it definitely felt a little different. The Nakiri had definitely had a better chopping experience because of the flatter profile, or the straighter profile. It made lateral chopping much easier than the chef knife. So now we're going to do some rocking with this knife as well as just straight chopping, and you will see, hopefully you will see the difference between the two knives. So right there, you can definitely see that I'm able to raise the knife a lot higher at the heel. because of the pronounced belly, or the more pronounced belly of the chef knife, and so it makes it easier to rock. You can definitely see that the transition between the heel and moving to the tip, it's much smoother and a little bit less abrupt than the Nakiri. Okay, so now let's do some chopping. Okay, so that was some lateral chopping with some rocking. Rocking was definitely very easy, but with the lateral chopping, it was also very easy because this knife is extremely light for a VG10 core steel. Very nice, definitely helped it a lot. I also noticed that because it doesn't have the same profile, in the really thick areas, it wasn't quite chopping down into the board as easily as the Nakiri was. That's the only thing. But in terms of being able to move the knife around and chop and do some quick lateral chopping, it does pretty well. So still definitely a pass in that category. So let's clean this up and move on to the ginger. so cutting that up was actually fairly easy. This is not the knife, and nor is this the type of food that you want to do some quick lateral chopping. It just doesn't move the same way, and it doesn't fall apart the same way. So I did mostly just push chops or push cuts. Excuse me one more time. You know what the worst thing is about this day or about this session is I'm either coughing or I'm blowing my nose, and because I've got onions and garlic and ginger on my hands, I'm blowing my nose. All that acid, that the stuff that makes you cry from onions is making me cry. I'm not crying as I'm cutting, but I'm crying as I'm blowing my nose or coughing. Yeah, slightly annoying. Okay, so now I can't see very well. Okay, here we go. Okay, we're okay. So now I'll do this. I'll save this half for rocking and one half for chopping. now onto the garlic, then the jalapeno. You see how I was smashing the garlic the first time with the Nakiri? The chef knife doesn't quite generate the same slapping power, but it'll still do the job. Quick tip for you, if you guys want to slap your garlic that way, make sure that you tilt the knife, the tip of the knife, slightly up, because you don't want to go down onto your tip. So just make sure that you can slap it laterally if you can, keep it completely flat, but if not, tilt your handle slightly lower. And it's fine for your ferrule to hit the board, but not your tip of the knife. Okay. Okay, so if you guys are wondering, this is what everything looks like. And a food processor could have done all of this in less than 10 minutes. So I don't recommend you doing this by hand unless you have to. I don't have a food processor, and if I had a food processor, I wouldn't have a channel like this to show you guys how knives work. So, okay, so let's just talk about the knives real quick. They're a little dirty. I should just rinse them real quick. Give them some respect. I'm gonna rinse the knives really quickly here. Okay, so excuse me for that. So while I'm drying these knives off, I'll do some talking. Okay, so let's see here. Where do we start? Oh, the reason why I used the both Enzos is because I wanted to keep everything the same. I want to keep all the variables as close as possible, such as the handle, material, brand new out of the box sharpness. So the only way I could do that is to use two knives by the same manufacturer. And so I had one here, or I had two here that I haven't used very much. They're both brand new. They haven't been used at all because I just have so many things going on here. And so the only difference between these two knives is are the the knife's profile, which made it really easy for me to compare. Because now I'm not worried about how the handle feels as I'm chopping, and I'm not worried about the differences in terms of their materials, the steel materials, and whatever else that goes through your mind. But in terms of actual performance, they were both fantastic. The Enzo, I can't just say Enzo anymore. I gotta say the actual knife type. So since I went with the Nakiri first, I'll talk about that knife first. So the Nakiri was a fantastic performer. Now, a lot of Nakiris I have used in the past are either really light in the blade department or really light in the handle department. The Enzo knives, these are actually made by Yaxel. If you guys don't know who Yaxel is a old knife manufacturer in Japan, one of the originals. They've been around for as long as any other of the major brands out there. A fantastic company. They make really, really nice, high quality knives. In terms of fit and finish, they make some of the best knives out there. If you can actually feel these knives, if you go to a store and look at a Yaxel knife, you can see that the ferrule and the handle, as well as the rivets and the end cap, there is no step in between them. They literally are like, it's like feeling one plane of material. Really fantastic fit and finish. The spine of this knife here, the Nakiri, is very nice. It's definitely squared, but very, very well polished, so there's no sharp edges anywhere. Again, the ferrule, the polishing of the ferrule is very well done, very seamless. There is it's not even a step, it's just there's a grind here, but the grind is also polished as well. The choil, very well polished. Just overall, a really well put together knife. This is a VG10 core steel with a Damascus layering on both sides with a hammered finish. But in terms of overall performance, it is a fantastic knife. One of the biggest things with Nakiris and why they perform so well is because they are not very long, and so all your cut power goes into a 6 or 7 inches of length, versus on a chef knife, that power of yours is distributed amongst, let's say, 8 inches or 9 inches of length. So you have a lot more cut force when it comes to lateral chopping, which is really nice. And when coming down and coming across, all that power is generated and kind of put into a very small area. So cutting things like the onions, for example, when I had the pile of onions and I was chopping the mound of the onions, it made it really easy. Every chop was able to reach down into the cutting board, versus the chef knife. And a lot of times when I was cutting the big mounds of onions, the chef knife never made it quite into the board when the pile of onions was put together. So in terms of the profile, because it is very straight and much more linear, you have a very interesting cutting performance. So okay, I think that's the last time I'll have to stop and step out of the camera during this video. So what I was saying about the Nakiris is they do generate more cutting power in your push cutting because of this straighter profile. On a chef knife, it's not that you necessarily lose your cutting power because the knives are slightly more curved typically. That cutting effect is just different. You'll find that chef knives will have a better time slicing and pulling because of that curved profile. So they are just a little bit different in terms of how they generate power and how they will transfer your power from your hand into the ingredient that you're cutting. In a situation where you have to choose one or the other, it really depends on what type of food you're cutting. If you're like me and you favor more of a lateral chop, which I enjoy because I think that it's faster, it's a little bit more efficient, the Nakiris will definitely pull ahead in that department. What I was a little bit surprised about on the chef knife was even though it didn't generate the same cut power, this particular knife, and I'm not talking all chef knives or all Gyutos for example, this particular chef knife was very nimble. So it's very light in the blade department. You can see that the weight definitely is favored more towards the rear of the handle. And so because of that, the blade is very nimble. So even though it doesn't generate the same amount of cut power as the Nakiri, I was able to move a little bit faster in some of the cutting ingredients, such as on the onions, for example. I was not able to cut into the cutting board when the onions were piled up. However, I was able to bring the knife a lot higher, and so I was able to cut the mounds of onions with the knife rocking. And you can see here that the Nakiri, if I were to show you side by side, let me put the Nakiri in front here. So both knives ran out on their respective bellies, but if I raise this to the tip of the knife, you can see that the chef knife is nearly double of what the Nakiri is in terms of its height before you actually come to the tip area. And you never want to really go beyond that. But so yeah, we're looking at, I would say about twice the height that you're able to raise a chef knife off of the cutting board. So that also makes a difference between how the knives behave. So this knife here, if you're doing a lot more slicing, where you're using the belly of the knife or the tip of the knife a lot more, the chef knives will definitely favor you more in terms of your cutting preference. If you're more like me and you like just to chop, the Nakiris would definitely pull ahead there. So both are fantastic knives. I really cannot fault any of these knives. They are wonderful knives. Their designs are fantastic. If you've never held a Yakuza before, go pick one up. Go to your local store, check one out. They are really fantastic. They are, again, some of the best fit and finish knives out there. And I haven't talked about the chef knife at all. I haven't talked about the Nakiri a little bit more. Again, the spine, very well polished. This knife is actually very thin for a VG10 knife. A lot of VG10 knives tend to be a little bit thicker, again, with the core steel and because they clad them. This here looks like it's about maybe 2.2 millimeters. So a very thin knife, which definitely aided it in terms of its overall cutting performance. There was never any time where a lot of people will say you don't want to rock. When you're rocking your knife, you definitely don't want to twist your knives at all. That's definitely true. You definitely want to avoid twisting your knives on the cutting board if you're just setting the board. But as long as you're cutting and you're actually twisting at the same time, that's actually okay. But you definitely don't want to just set the knife on the cutting board and just twist. That will definitely risk you chipping up a chunk of your belly out. So overall, both knives are fantastic. You guys are probably wondering how they actually are holding up at this point. They're both, I'm sure they're both razor sharp, but I'll do a really quick cut test to show you. So I'm gonna go from edge to edge and you guys will see how clean these knives are. Yeah, there's no skipping anywhere on the paper. And you can tell by the sound, it is just very, very sharp. Go to the chef knife. Yeah, so it's just a little wet and some ingredients on the blade still. But in terms of its sharpness, it's very, very sharp. It's still razor sharp out of the box, or as out of the box. Yeah, so I mean, I love these knives. They're really, really nice. And Enzo knives, or just Yakuza knives in general, are a little bit less money. They're anywhere between 10% to 20% less money than equivalent Miyabis or Shuns. I would say in terms of quality, they're just as good as any Shuns or Miyabis. In fit and finish, I would say they're just as good and sometimes maybe even better. Now in terms of performance, they definitely are just as good as any other major Japanese corporation out there. The only drawback to a Yakuza or this sort of a knife in general is the micarta, linen micarta handles tend to feel a little bit heavy. So if you are the type that are used to a knife that is more nimble in the handle or lighter in the handle, these definitely feel a little bit more heavier. And I would say really we're talking about maybe 2 to 3 grams heavier than ideal. But they're very comfortable. They have an ovalized handle. The really cool thing about their handles is even though they are ovalized, they are actually very narrow. So they give people with really big hands a good grip, even folks like me with smaller hands, a really nice grip as well. And they actually are ovalized not only in this profile, but also in their from top to bottom view as well. So just really comfortable handles. They are definitely one of the most comfortable handles out there in terms of a Japanese knife manufacturer. And so even though that they've been around for a long time, I don't really see their handles changing. I've known of them now for about 10 years, and every single year they put out the same handle design. But that's okay because it's actually a really good handle. Not a big deal. I would like to see them experiment and try different things, but for them, I think that because they're such a small manufacturer, they don't want to change up too many things, and they really want to stick with what they're good at. And so overall, the Makara linen handles are really fantastic. They are practically bulletproof. I've never seen any of these go bad. I own a number of Yaxel knives, and I've never had any of their knives rivets or the material crack, warp in any way. So in terms of their choice of material, they really have dialed it down to being able to deliver a really high quality knife at a very affordable price when you compare it to comparable Shuns, Miyabis, and Masimoto's, for example. So if you guys have never checked them out, definitely do. They make a really good range of knives. I'll definitely have more Yaxel knives and more Enzo knives in the review in the coming weeks. And again, this review was put together because a lot of folks have been asking for Nakiri versus chef knives. If you guys want to see other knife designs, go head to head. If I can put together the same manufacturer with different knife profiles, I definitely will. If I can't, then I will just mix up the most best matchup of, that I can. But definitely let me know what other knives you guys want to see go head to head, as well as other whetstones as well. So I'm gonna do a lot of kind of head-to-head challenges these days. A lot of folks have been asking for them. They're a lot more fun. They're more interesting when you see two knives or two whetstones being compared side by side. So I'll do a lot more of those, and obviously I will do at least one cut test a week if I can, or a cut demo, not cut test, but cut demo of whatever I'm cooking in the kitchen. Again, this is my tonic that I'm making. If you guys are curious about it, I will leave the list of ingredients in the description below. So just scroll down to the end of the video or bottom of the screen, and just I guess it's called show more. So click on that button and you guys will see all the ingredients that I will be using for this tonic right here. So in addition to what you guys see today, I'm missing horseradish, which I couldn't find at the local market. So I'll just skip that. So basically from here, I mix everything together, and then I add, I top off or add everything into a mason jar, and we'll fill it up about maybe 3/4 of the way. Then I'll add my organic apple cider vinegar, and then I'll let it sit in the cupboard for 2 to 3 weeks. And after that, it's ready to go. So I have enough ingredients here to make about 3 of these jars, 3 good sized jars, which I'm very excited about. And yeah, so hopefully this will keep me healthy and infection free for the next 6 months during the winter or so. Yeah, alright, well that'll be it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.